Exploring quadratic functions. For each function, fill in the table of values and sketch the graph. So we are given x values and we want to find what its partner y value is. In order to do that, we have to look back at the equation that we have here, and everywhere we see an x, we're going to substitute in the value. So we're going to start right here with the first value, -2. And I'm going to do my work down here. You could do your work on Scratch Sheet or in your margin. So I have y equals, and instead of x squared, I'm going to put -2 squared. I put my -2 in parentheses to remind myself that I'm squaring the whole thing. So if I put my calculator here, if I just type in -2 and then hit the square button, it's going to give me -4. But that is not the answer. If I put in -2 in parentheses and square that, which we are squaring the whole value, -2, I come out with 4. So squaring means you're multiplying -2 times -2, which is +4. So be very careful when you're using your calculator, especially if you're using your phone or something like that. So now we'll look at what happens. So when x is -2, y is 4. If I'm going to graph that, -2 on the x would be right here. And 4 for the y would be 1, 2, 3, 4 would be up here. And so this point right here is -2, -4. And those values make this equation true. Y equals -1 squared. -1 times -1 is +1. And so to plot that point, my ordered pair is -1, 0. So -1 is right here. And 1 is right here. So this point is right there on my graph. Y equals 0 squared. 0 times 0 is 0. And that is the origin. Y equals 1 squared. 1 times 1 is 1. So my ordered pair here is 1, 1. So here is where 1 is, and we already marked that in the y. So here's the other point. And our last point, y equals 2 squared. 2 times 2 is 4. Notice we're getting some repeat values. So here is 2 for the x, and if y is 4, that is right here. And now we would connect those lines in a smooth curve. Quadratic functions are called, graphs are called parabolas, and we should make that into a curve. I put little arrows at the end of my curve here to show that this graph is going to extend in these two directions forever and ever. Take a look at number 3. We have some parentheses. Our equation is y equals the quantity x plus 1 squared. And so we're going to do the same thing wherever we see an x. We're going to substitute the value that we're trying to solve for. So y equals -3 plus 1 squared. -3 plus 1 is -2. You can do that on your calculator, or you can pull out a number line, which you have in your binder, to see that that simplifies to -2. And then if we square that, -2 times -2 is 4. And if you put that in your calculator, you would type in -3 plus 1, and we would take that quantity and we'd square it. And since it's squaring the whole answer, it's going to take that -2, and it does show me that I'm getting 4. So you want to plug in each of your x values into your equation, and you can see that I'm taking each of these x values and I'm plugging them in for x in the equation, and then you need to work through to simplify. So -2 plus 1 is -1. And again, you can use your calculator, use your number line. So that equals -1 squared. -1 times -1 is +1. And so let's plot these points as we go through. So this first point was -3, 4. So my numbers are not labeled, but my boxes go by 1. So if I have to go to -3, that's 1, 2, 3 to the left, and 1, 2, 3, 4 up. This point right here was my first point, -3, 4. And then -2 is right next to that. So -2 to +1 is right here. And then we're going to continue to work through our table. So I got these values. I'm seeing a similar pattern here, same y values as question number 1. I've plotted them right here, and then you draw your smooth curve. We'll go on to answer number 4. I'm going to skip 4 for now and show you number 5. For question number 5, we have y equals x squared and then +1. So order of operations, say we're going to do that square first, and then we're going to add 1. So again, everywhere you see an x, you're going to plug in these values. So plugging in -2 right here, I would have y equals -2 squared plus 1. -2 times -2 is +4. And 4 plus 1 is 5. So again, go -2 on the x-axis, which is right here, and up 5, which is right here, and that would be my first point. My next point, plugging in -1 for x, -1 squared. So -1 times -1 is 1, plus the 1 that's on the outside. 1 plus 1 is 2. Then we would plot that point. Next point we're plugging in is 0. So 0 squared is 0, because 0 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 gives us 1. Plot that point. That's a y-intercept for us. And then plug in 1. 1 squared is 1 times 1, which is 1, plus the 1 on the outside. 1 plus 1 is 2. Point is at 1, 2. The x is 1 and the y is 2. Last point that we're plugging in is when x is 2. 2 squared is 2 times 2, or 4. Plus the 1 equals 5. So our last point is 2, 5. That point is right here where x is 2 and y is 5. Now draw your curve. Question 6 is similar to question 5, except for now we're subtracting, and you will do that one on your own. For number 9, we're going to do the same process. We're plugging in these values to see what the shape and location of our graph is. We have more numbers being plugged in, but we're still going to just, everywhere we see an x, we're going to plug in our x values and simplify for y. Here you see my x is -3, so we have -3 plus 1, quantity squared, minus 2. Order of operations tells us we start inside the parentheses. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Which we need to square. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is 4. We still have that minus 2. And then 4 minus 2 is 2. So I find it very helpful to show each step as I go through. So y is equal to 2 when x is equal to negative 3. So here you see y equals x plus 1 quantity squared minus 2. When x is negative 3, that's going to be y equals negative 3 plus 1 squared minus 2. So what is y when x is negative 3? Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. You can use a number line or a calculator. That has to be squared minus 2. So after we do our parentheses in order of operations, we're going to do our exponent. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is 4. And I still have my minus 2. Now I just have 4 minus 2, which is 2. So that's what y is equal to when x is negative 3. So we plug that into our table and we'll plot that point. Let's look at what y equals when x is negative 2. I find for these multi-step equations that it's best to write down each step to really make sure you're getting it correct, even if you're using a calculator. So I can pull up my calculator here, and I can still use my calculator. So negative 2 plus 1 would give me negative 1. I'm going to write that down to make sure that I get that. Then I can square that value. Order of operations says I would square next, and I get 1. I still have my minus 2, and so if I subtract 2, so I just hit minus and it pulls the previous answer there, and that gives me negative 1 for my answer. So when x is negative 2, y is negative 1, and we would plot that point. Plug in the rest of the values and solve for y. Check your values here and plot those points. And you get a curve like this. We're going to be talking about observations that you notice when you're graphing these. So keep that in mind. What patterns are you seeing as you go through these? And what key characteristics are you noticing? And then number 10 you'll do on your own.